Welcome once again to another entry of my director's diary, and this is week 3, day 2. Stay tuned to hear all about how things are coming together, how we're progressing in each individual scene, as well as dealing with creative challenges around kind of costume sourcing and that kind of aspect of the directing process. So today, once again, we begin the day as we usually do with the cast coming in at the 10 to 10:30, and regrettably, I tried to make sure I arrive 15 minutes before, especially when we get deep into kind of week 2 and beyond, where time is extra premium. And I found myself, arriving 5 minutes before, which isn't too bad. But it meant that I arrived a little bit after the cast, and so they were waiting for me to let them in. So that sometimes isn't a good thing to do. What you want to do is be almost the first one there, um, because then when you talk about timekeeping, you have a leg to stand on. But that should be excused, and that will be mentioned later on. So they came in, we had a movement session, again, worked together to start bringing things together. I think with movement sessions, you want to prioritize the kind of the big set pieces, whether it's group work, group choreography, or that kind of thing, before you start tackling transitions. But always thinking about the transitions, right? When you're blocking, mark the placeholder transitions, right? Mark and go, okay, from scene 1 to scene 2, this is what you're going to do. This is how you end up. This is how you arrive to scene 2. Okay, this is how you get into scene 3, and so on and so forth. So it's not a big shock. The actors must always know where they've just come from and how they ended up getting there. Um, so we did that, but I also decided to amend my kind of timetable a little bit or add to it by getting the movement director to lead a group warm up for the first 30 minutes. And I spoke to her the night before via text about what I wanted. But it meant that, because I hadn't communicated that to the cast, some people were kind of salting in around 10:01. And you have to be strict with these things, right? You have to be strict. To begin with, there's a playfulness, but you let one thing slide and it becomes a whole thing. So let them know that it's not okay. And especially when you got younger cast, they can be a little bit more flexible. Um, so older cast members can be stuck in their ways, but I think if you let the younger cast know that this is the professional practice that is expected from them. So we did that. And then round kind of 11 o'clock, we also had a photographer coming in. And that's always a challenge in itself because as a director, of course, everybody's thinking about the photographer, right? So good thing we had a really dynamic session for the photographer to work with, or to work on. So afternoon session was mainly movement, and I had to prioritize certain bits, and that's like I said, that's something you have to think about. What key moments, and reminding the movement director, because sometimes they can get carried away with things they're doing, that we also need to look at this piece. And there was a little bit of a potential kind of conflict of creative differences, but I think if you also have the humility to step back and go, okay, yeah, that sounds like it might work, and then maybe reflect on it later on. But it was great. Work came together nicely. Um, Afternoon, we went back to revisiting our individual scenes as we're doing in week 3, which is visiting and revisiting scenes. Week 4, I like to call that the cleanup week, right? Right now, we're revisiting scenes. And this is where it got very interesting and exciting, because I don't want to let things go. So even the way the scene starts, you don't want the actors to get the feeling as if, oh, well, they didn't say anything, so it must be okay. So even the top of the scene, how they enter the scene, the energy they come in with, that has to be, you know, appropriate to the energy, right? The preceding scene, what's going to happen. So let them know that they start the scene in that way. Of course, we started it with our discussion around objectives and talking into detail about that. Um, we then came across a block where I just needed the actor to have a little bit more oomph and drive in the scene, and they were being very casual. So I employed the technique, and I talk about this in one of the sessions of Direct Your First Play. Um, and I used the exercise of I want you to stay, I want you to leave. I adapted it so that the one that wanted this person to stay actually said, I want to stay, because that was more appropriate to the scene. I want you to leave. I began by kind of asking them if they've ever done it before. And one of them had, so I got them to explain it. And I said, yeah, do it. Now, the aim of this exercise is for them to have a little bit more front-footedness, to also get them out of their preparation that they've done, to vocally also open them up a little bit, to be more active, and surprise themselves. So you want that climb and different tactics. So it's not, I want you to stay, I want you to leave, I want you to stay, I want you to stay. And it's not just, I want you to stay, I want you to leave. It's like really make it about the other person that you're speaking to. Don't try to make it sound pretty or trick me that you're making different tactics. So I really pushed. And when that didn't work, I went to the yes, no. Now I took away the words because now you just got one word. So I did that. But this time I added, I wanted to ask them directly how they felt about this character, right? So how do you feel about him? What's he done? Okay. How did that impact you? How's that going to impact your life? All right. And the loved ones. So get them talking them through their given circumstances, right? And trying to get them to relate to what's going on and get the reality of the situation. So the stakes are extra high. So you want this to heighten the stakes. The point of this exercise is to heighten the stakes, because sometimes actors can be too casual because they want to be cool. They've done it in their bedroom, whatever. So they want to be cool and look good and sound good. And I go, no, I'm not interested in that. So I did the same thing for the other. And now the one actor, I wanted them to be more to embody the text a little bit more. And what I mean by that is sometimes actors divorce themselves of their bodies. So what they're saying and what they're doing in the body becomes very flat. So I want you to stay, I want you to leave. But in real life, just as I am right now, your body is connected to your words. And that links to what you are doing and what you're saying. It accents what you're doing, right? Sometimes you can't help but really, really, really embody and physicalize, and it becomes physical and guttural and visceral and less cerebral. That's when people go, whoa, what's that? What's going on? This one's really impacted by what they're saying, and they're trying to impact the other person, and they're being impacted by what this person just said. So that's what I tried to get them to do. So it got to an extent, it got to an extent where I needed to hold them back so they can feel some kind of resistance with the yes, no. And then I got them to go into the text, and it kind of exploded in a way that they hadn't expected. And so much so that actually that's when, if they think they knew their lines, that's when they realize they don't, because now they're doing something different and they start stumbling or whatever. So at this stage, you also want them to be still on book. But this, I fast forwarded this. I fast forwarded this. This would have been the cleanup week in week 4, but I really wanted to get them to get out of their comfort zone. And there was some really good work that was happening. There was people doing some sort of physicalization. You know, it's not that you hurt the other person, but you used the other person. And one of the actors did that in a very, very kind of instinctive way, you know. So, and I'm also navigating or negotiating, you know, an actor who it presents themselves as maybe my ideas aren't quite as strong as their idea. You know, they're very reluctantly, and there's also reluctantly taking them on. There's also yawning and that kind of thing, a showing of tiredness. And sometimes we do it as well. So be careful of that. And to begin with, you know, you could nip it in the bud and go, what's wrong? What's going on here? You're yawning a lot. But I'll address that in a bit. So we worked on that scene, and also we had a visitor, you know, a director observing, and that sometimes can play into how you work with your actors, because you want to present, you know, so people talk about you glowingly. So just be aware of that. But so having this exercise, this yes, no, I want you to stay, I want you to leave, or I want to stay, I want to leave, can be very, very impactful. But also having some level of resistance, right? I might even employ getting them to run around the space and come back into the scene because it just gets too stale and too comfortable. And I want them to know that when we're here, you're not trying to be cool. Stop trying to sound cool. That's the next stage, right? And I told them about that. That's the next level where you cannot divorce yourself of your body. And they did a lot of good work today in the next two scenes, in the next scene, which is amazing. All the actors were really engaging with it beautifully. Um, so finished the day. We had planned to move into another scene, so we do three scenes, but I realized we were kind of like half past, and it doesn't make sense for me to start something new. They're tired, so used it as a chance to kind of reflect on what they just did. You know, even in that particular scene where they did some strong work, I asked them, I actually was going to skip over that, but I think it's wise to just basically dissect a little bit what just happened and give them the chance to talk it through and talk about it. So I talked to them about reminding them about the process, for me to trust their process and for them to trust mine. Also reminding them about time. 10 o'clock isn't necessarily your arrival time. 10 o'clock is your start time. That's something we can communicate to the stage management when they do their calls. Arriving, most theaters, you know, they're open by quarter two or 10 to. So if you can arrive 10 to 10, get them to arrive 10 to 10, 5 to 10. So it's not a time for you to make tea. It's not a time for them to make tea. It's a time by 10 o'clock, you're doing your warm up. So I let them know. And I jokingly said, you know, the dictator has emerged. So that's something for them to think about. But keep them kind of feeling very inspired and congratulate them on great work. Always congratulate them and make them feel like we did amazing work today. And they did. So you're not lying. So yes, so that's how we kind of deal with possible kind of problems around timekeeping and that kind of thing. And they're yawning as well. I asked them, well, are we all tired? And they all very honestly said, yeah, we are. I said, well, you know, I understand that completely, but let's really dig deep into our stamina because it's about to get harder. So let's dig deep into our stamina. And I'll address the possible, you know, yawning maybe in another session because you don't want to kind of like get them and create this tension, but it's something they need to look out for. All right. Well, thank you. I'll catch you next one, the next day, tomorrow, where we continue our work, our revisiting of scenes. We may be even ahead of schedule and we're beginning props and, you know, coming close to interacting with set. So look out for that. Keep directing. Direct, play, repeat. I'm going to use that a little bit more.